a discussion on cell phones and their use in crime investigation. We have a very, very special external guest in our class tonight, Mr. Fryer from Risk Diversion. He is a cell phone expert in many aspects, and he has agreed to come and share his insights with us tonight. Peter, the floor is yours. Everybody's mics and cameras are muted, so you can unmute yourself and share your presentation and hit the road running. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much for that warm introduction. And I'd like to think that for the last 2.5 decades, I've sort of gotten to grips with technology and the use of it in the investigative life cycle. So my aim tonight will be to share with you my take on how technology can be used in the investigation and detection of crime in a very practical manner, I do believe. Is my screen visible to everybody?
It is, Peter, thank you. I just want to alert you that we are recording. Is that okay?
Yes, I've got no objections to that.
Okay, brilliant, thanks.
So the key driver for my discussion tonight will be the use of different types of data in a typical investigation. And when I say typical investigation, it could be murder, rape, robbery, kidnapping, any of the flavors that we currently are seeing in South Africa. I'll cover in very broad strokes mobile device extraction. So that'll be data on the physical handset or smart device that you might be using. We'll also talk briefly about call data records or itemized billing or detailed data billing, as it might also be referred to. And then I'm going to linger a little bit about the tower, the actual cell phone tower, or BTS. BTS refers to a base transceiver station, so that's the cell phone towers that we see popping up all over the show. And then I'll also touch briefly on the analysis, how the orchestration of all of these pieces of data come together to assist law enforcement agency and ultimately the prosecution to do their work. In terms of my experience and background in this field, so for just a little bit more than 25 years now, I've been involved in digital investigation. Digital investigation is the sort of subject area that encompasses the extraction of data from devices. That'll include computers, CCTV systems, cell phones, vehicles, which is becoming more and more popular, and then also data harvested from atypical sources, which would be things like drones, smart watches, the new smart glasses that have come about. So my experience and my exposure has primarily been as a support function to law enforcement. So the technologies that we utilize in our lab in Pretoria are the very same technologies that are used by law enforcement agencies globally. So we have a very good idea of what the newest trends are and what we're seeing out in the wild, so to speak. And for the next few minutes, I'm going to try and impart that to you in as practical, technical terms as possible. The first thing I want to emphasize is that most of us, if not all of us, suffer from a medical condition, and this medical condition is commonly known as nomophobia. Unfortunately, it's not going to be able to get you off sick from your employer, but nomophobia is a psychological condition that people develop when they're detached from mobile phone connectivity, or if their cell phone battery gets to a certain level. We all experience this anxiety of where can I charge my phone? I've got no internet connectivity. When you're at a restaurant, do you have a Wi-Fi that I can climb onto? And nomophobia perfectly describes this psychological anxiety that most of us feel. And in terms of some studies that were conducted to be able to encompass this condition referred to as nomophobia, the research shows that on average, we are no more than 1.2 meters away from our mobile devices at any given time. And the furthest you'll be away from your phone will be on average 1.2 meters, and that'll only be when you're in the shower. So that speaks to how attached we are to these mobile devices, and in fact how important mobile devices have become in terms of in investigations. There have been many prominent cases over the last 2 decades where cell phone evidence has been absolutely critical in being able to prove or disprove a specific investigative hypothesis. And also, more importantly, the data that's extracted from the mobile device is considered the only forensic evidence that will allow you to prove intent, or at least go so far as to assist you in proving intent. Consider for a moment, if you will, an SMS or a WhatsApp message that's been sent to someone, say, I'm going to come and kill you, and that message is retrieved from the mobile device, in some instances retrieved from a deleted state, and this person has now been found killed. That then proves the intent of the sender of this message, and it's also why mobile devices are one of the most commonly collected forensic artifacts in crimes these days. This is just a sort of screenshot of what we're seeing in the news, and this is everyday news. We become so desensitized to what we read, what we see, what we hear, but what we're picking up is a huge increase in kidnap for ransom, and these kidnappings are targeting prominent individuals. And I have a small case study that I'll discuss towards the end of the session. But kidnapping is on the increase, where many years ago, kidnapping wasn't a favorite crime. And also the importance of cell phone evidence and its admissibility in particular cases. I myself have been involved in several trials within a trial where the admissibility of cell phone evidence is discussed at length. And one of the key factors, and it speaks largely to the recovery of deleted information, and how reliable that information is, and whether it should in fact be admissible in a particular matter. So we often find ourselves drawn into a formal proceeding inside of a court case to speak to cell phone evidence, speaking to data extracted from mobile devices, and whether a deleted message or a photo or a Facebook post should in fact be allowed. And more often the case is that, yes, the evidence is allowed, because the methodology applied to extract the deleted information from the mobile device, the legislative and jurisdictional permissions that are granted in order to access the device are in place. So it gives a pretty good idea of what defense advocates are putting their focus on, because they understand how damning that evidence is when applied properly with inside of a formal proceeding. And that formal proceeding could be a criminal case, it could be a disciplinary hearing, but cell phone evidence is most often the key of all of these crime types. And when people are saying, well, was the cell phone used to murder the person? No, but the cell phone allows you to prove intent. It allows you to prove whether the subscriber, the owner, the user of that mobile device was on the crime scene, and that speaks to what we refer to as cell site analysis. And then the actual data, was there build-up to the murder, was there build-up to the kidnapping? And that build-up could include things like Google searches, looking for ways to hide your location or destroy evidence. So cell phones are very, very prominent, and they form a very important gear in the inner workings of criminal investigation. And as such, it is relied very heavily by law enforcement. If we take the physical device, which I'm sure most of you probably have one in your hand right now, or busy looking at one, there are three typical ways of extracting data from the physical device. I'm not going to speak to cloud extractions. I'm going to talk to just the three physical techniques that are utilized by law enforcement to gain access to a mobile device. The physical means are a logical acquisition, a physical acquisition, and then what we refer to as a chip-off. And the logical acquisition is where you have permission to access the device insofar as it relates to the PIN code or the passcode or the pattern unlock. You have all the necessary software installed, and you can communicate with the phone as if you had connected it to your own laptop and you had all the permissions. So law enforcement utilize different specialized tools to be able to logically acquire data from the mobile device. A physical extraction, and the naming convention, physical, it means that we're doing something different. And again, you do need to have physical access to the device. You utilize a cable in most instances to do a physical extraction of a mobile device. And what the physical extraction of the mobile device allows you to do is to recover deleted information from the device. So if you consider the way that you manage your mobile device on a daily basis, the apps that you use, the content that you create, and the items that you delete, and more importantly, why you deleted it. It's not that storage is a consideration on the mobile device. Most even entry-level phones have 100 gigs of storage. But if you consider why we delete certain things, let's say, for example, it might be images that could be embarrassing, that could be incriminating, that could be explicit in nature. So once we've deleted that artifact from the mobile device, it doesn't disappear through the earphone port or into the ether. That data still resides on the physical device, on the physical disk that's contained on the device. And by utilizing a physical extraction, we're able to recover this deleted data and restore it to its original state, which means chats, internet searches, photographs, movies, in-app chats. All of that information is able to be recovered in a forensically sound manner, a manner which is acceptable for the court, and then presented to the court in the format in which it was. So a photo would then be reconstructed as an image, and that image then could hold a lot of evidence. It could be a photograph of a vehicle that was taken as part of a surveillance operation prior to a kidnapping. It could be photographs of a house's alarm system or locks or gates. So a lot of real key evidence that we find and we rely on comes from physical extraction of deleted data from mobile devices. Then finally, on the far end of the spectrum, we have an acquisition method which is known as chip-off. And chip-off is where logical and physical means have failed, or the phone is in such a state that there is no way to interact with the device in terms of its screen having been damaged, or the phone having been damaged, or in some instances where the passcode is not able to be retrieved, or the device is not supported by any of the forensic tools. So with chip-off, this involves dismantling the phone and then, under some very specific conditions, removing the memory off of the board, the PC board from the phone, placing it into a specialized adapter, and then extracting the entire memory of that disk, which will include all of the system's data, the user data, and also the deleted data. And in some instances, that there would be the only way of extracting data from a mobile device. And a very interesting case that we worked on several years ago, it was a body that was found in the Kalahari. It had been buried for some time. And underneath the decomposed remains of the body was found a Nokia cell phone. And I know you're all thinking that Nokias are indestructible, but in this case, with the body fluids having leaked, this mobile device had in fact disintegrated to a point where there were very small components of the phone remaining. And with that piece of PC board that was still remaining in the shallow grave, we were able to perform a chip-off and recover all of the messages from the mobile device. And when we talk a little later about call data records, on your billing, if those of you that have regard to your itemized bill, you'll see that you will see your call logs, the number that was dialed, the duration of the call, and you'll also see an SMS log, which will show that messages were sent to a particular number. But the one thing that the service providers aren't able to give is the content of the message. And in this particular case, we were able to recover the contents of SMSs, which detailed an exchange between two individuals, one which was the deceased, which was later identified, and then also a suspect in the case, which wasn't previously known, but there was an array of messages between the victim in this case and this now newly identified subject as a result of the SMSs. And the content of the SMSs revealed growing conflict and ultimately an invitation to the victim, which in essence led to them being lured to a remote spot where they were killed and their bodies subsequently buried. And the mobile device was thrown into the shallow grave, the body on top of it. And because the area was so remote, the intention was that nobody would find this body. The body was only discovered many months later, as a result of an extensive search for this missing person. So those three acquisition techniques are what law enforcement rely on daily in order to gain access to mobile devices and to the data contained therein. If we think for a moment, what do we expect? What can we come to expect from the mobile device? Well, your call logs, who you spoke to,
Peter?
the name associated with that. Yes.
My sincerest apologies. Just go back one slide, please. There was a question, if you could just quickly recap the logical part of that.
Sure, no problem. So the logical,
yeah.
Sorry, let me see how I can.
No, you're there.
I can't. Can I see the questions? Yes? I can't see the questions.
Okay,
I don't think I can see the questions and share.
Okay, no. I'll handle the questions on the chat.
Oh, if you don't mind, or somebody can just pop up on the mic if they want to. So the logical acquisition is the manner that you would engage with the device. So logical acquisition involves the connecting to the phone using a cable or Bluetooth, but you also have to have the permission, meaning the PIN code, the passcode, the pattern unlock, to be able to gain access to the data on the mobile device. So logical acquisition is the easiest. And if I can maybe explain the process in a very simple manner, logical acquisition would be arriving at a suspect's door, knocking on the door. They open the door for you. You identify yourself and say, "I'm investigating this matter. Can I please have all of the photos on your phone?" And they will then decide what they give you. And what they give you would be what is live on the phone, no deleted information. So the logical extraction of a mobile device does not recover deleted artifacts from the phone, because understand that the mobile device isn't actually designed to allow you to access that portion of the memory where deleted data exists. So you have to then force the extraction by doing a physical extraction, and the physical extraction is a lot more intensive, meaning that you have to put the phone into a specific download mode, where logical, the phone's on, you have the PIN code or the passcode, you connect to your computer, and you're asking to provide me with photos. But when you ask for deleted photos, the phone then says, no, you can't have your deleted photos. That's when you would move to a physical acquisition. So it largely depends. And if somebody had to ask me, but my phone, can you do this on my phone? My standard answer would usually be, it depends on the make and the model of the phone, the version of the operating system, when last the apps were updated. So there are a lot of technical sort of moving parts to when you do a logical acquisition or a physical acquisition, and then chip off is sort of the last result, the last resort, in the sense that you actually destroy the device. So you disassemble the device in such a manner by removing the memory from the board that it'll never ever work again. And we found that sometimes the threat of that inspires some of the accused to then provide their PIN code to gain access to the mobile device. So if everybody's happy with that, I'm going to move on.
Yes, thanks.
So if we consider for a moment the way we use our mobile device. It's used for navigation, access to information, content creation, entertainment. So, the device becomes indispensable, and as such, the volume of data that you're getting from the device is also, in some instances, several hundreds of gigs of data. And what can we expect? And this again, begs the question: is how do you use your phone on a day-to-day basis? So I can assume that everybody makes and receives calls, so there would be call logs. And again, those call logs would provide you with not only the number of the person contacted, but also the name that is associated with that person in the address book, which is very helpful because people use pseudonyms, or they use nicknames, or sometimes they write out the full name. So depending again, whose mobile device it is that you're analyzing. And then also SMS, MMS, location data. Location data is very helpful, more specifically when the user has allowed the specific apps or the various apps that they use to use their location. So if, for example, you have allowed your camera or your camera app to be able to use the location when you're taking photographs, that's really great for managing certain events, or timeline. When you're on holiday, you immediately get the geotag, but that geotagging also assists when you're analyzing a mobile device of a suspect, for example, and geotagging has been enabled on the apps, because then you have the ability to see where the mobile device was, and as such, the subscriber or the user associated with it when Facebook was accessed, or the banking app was utilized, or photos were taken. So that's also quite a critical aspect, because more often than not, you need to be able to place the individual on the scene of the crime. And you have your traditional forensic space, the touch and trace evidence, fingerprints, the biological trace evidence found on the scene, shoe prints. You might have CCTV footage, but the mobile device itself also will give you the ability to place that mobile device, and in so doing, the person using the phone on the scene of the crime, or even just tracking their movements over a period of time, where they were during the commissioning of specific crimes, or where they work, where they sleep, where they play. That's also very, very valuable intelligence, specifically if you're trying to apprehend a wanted person. So the typical kinds of data that we're getting, which is user created, is very valuable, because the user created content allows us to interpret the intention of the person, the behavior of the person when they're on Facebook, when they're on the internet, what apps they use, what they use those apps for, and then also having a look at the communication patterns. So typically we'll look at 3 different analytical methodologies when having regard to call logs, for example. You would look at data in a relational manner. How am I linked to a particular individual? Is it enough to say that I'm linked to somebody because their contact is on my phone? I don't think so. But if I have several calls between myself and this individual, that relationship is proven. That's the relational transaction, or the relational analysis that we perform. And then you have transactional analysis, and transactional analysis would look to, what is the frequency that I would speak to this person? Is there a pattern that's discernible, meaning I only phone this person every Tuesday after 4 o'clock in the afternoon? That could speak to the time when this person is available on the air or in contact. Or is there something that I can see, well, there's a common number that's been contacted, the calls last several minutes to an hour plus. So that indicates a more intimate kind of relationship. And that's very two-dimensional data, because again, you're seeing a number, you're seeing the duration of a call, but you're not seeing much else until you're able to extract the mobile device and associate a name to that contact, or a contact photo that's been associated with that number. So if I am making my point, which I hope I am, what we're typically expecting to find on the extracted data is the way that individual us would use our mobile devices on a day-to-day basis, and how we can use that data then to either prove or disprove an investigative hypothesis. Then we need to consider also the differentiation between content data and metadata. So metadata is in fact just, it's data of data. So metadata refers to file attributes, when a file was created, when it was accessed, when it was modified, the device that might have been utilized to create it. So if we take a photograph, the content data of the photograph would be the picture of a person. But the metadata would be the time it was created, the mobile device that was used, the camera make and model, whether the flash fired, what the orientation was, it portrait or landscape, what was the focal depth, a whole lot of things, and could also include the GPS coordinates of where that photo was taken. So that is, again, another element of the data. So it would be one layer down from the content, would be the metadata. And an interesting subfield in forensics now is the detection of artificially generated content. With the amount of apps that are currently available for you to be able to use words to create content, there are often instances, even in the news, where a picture of a famous person is spread either in a compromising position, something embarrassing, something explicit, and the fallback position is, well, the image was tampered with and AI was used to generate the image. Now, there's a whole subset in digital forensics, which is the detection and investigation of AI-generated content, and those include photos, videos, and audio. And one of the key attributes of the data that we utilize in order to determine whether the image we're seeing is a camera original, or has it been tampered with or manipulated in some way, or in fact entirely created with the use of artificial intelligence, that would then be metadata analysis. That wouldn't be just relying on a critical viewing of an image. It would mean looking at the metadata and the internals of that file to determine, is it in fact AI generated content, or is it a camera original? Camera original meaning the photo that was taken with the device. In us being able to extract all of this kind of information, it does open legal and ethical considerations. And South Africa, with the recently promulgated cyber crimes bill, it means that we have to have warrants in place in order to access information on mobile devices. The kind of access that we have is also strictly determined by the warrant, and also what data we're accessing. So it's no longer the merry phishing exercise it was of a few years ago, where if I have your mobile device, I can then unlock it, get at all the data, and then I can sift through all of the photos, all of the chats, all of the apps, and sort of cherry pick pieces of evidence. In the current framework, we have to say, what are we doing? Who's going to be doing it? And what are we expecting to find, or at least what we're looking for in terms of the warrant? And then you also have your privacy concerns. Is when you've now downloaded this individual's mobile device, consider, if you will, for a few moments, the photos that you have on your phone that you wouldn't want anybody to see. It might be an embarrassing photograph of someone that you've taken a photograph of someone that's not their most flattering image, or it could be explicit in nature, private, something that might be considered romantic. But this now gets leaked to the world because the detective or the investigating officer has been irresponsible with the privacy of this person's data. So a lot of the mobile device tools that we utilize, these forensic tools, allow for the creation of an encrypted data container to prevent data, should be misplaced, lost, stolen, being accessed by just anybody. So an encrypted container file is created when you download the phone, and can only then be accessed utilizing specialist tools. And you can add layers of security, which includes but not limited to things like passwords onto those files. So from a legal standpoint, the manufacturers of these tools rely on the framework wherein it is used. So each country has different legal frameworks. If you're working between different countries, you have the Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty, and you also have foreign assistance that can be relied upon. But the ethical considerations, those are implemented by the investigating officer or by the analyst in this matter, And because they have this kind of intimate access to the data, it places a huge burden on them because of the risk of this information being utilized. If you again consider for a moment that the phone that might have now been analyzed is a prominent celebrity or a politician or someone famous, and it would be so easy to leak the contents of this mobile device to a news agency for reward, or just to be able to share this information with the world. We're going to launch now into what I'll refer to as CDRs, or call data records. And if we consider the CDR, there's a whole way in which call data information is accessed by law enforcement. In the South African context, the access is gained by means of a subpoena in terms of section 205, and a lot of people have the misconception that a 205 is only for the cell phone companies. In fact, it's not. I think if I'm not mistaken, it's to compel an uncooperative witness. So the 205 would be used to get bank statements, access control logs, and in most instances the call data records, and also the tower information. So if we think of what you're getting from a call data record, is the structure is in such a way that you would get timestamps, which is very important, to note when calls were made, missed, or received, and then also the dialed numbers. That could include incoming numbers as well, the call duration, and then the location. And the location, if you've ever had a sight of a itemized bill, you'll see that the location is usually resolved to a common name. So it'll say something like Menlyn Park 4, but that is not the actual location. That's just the name that's been associated with that particular tower, for you to be able to easily reference where you were when those calls were made. And these sources are primarily from telecom providers. So in South Africa, Vodacom, MTN, Cell C, Rain, Telkom. There are a few virtual mobile network operators, and then law enforcement databases. So law enforcement would, by means of that subpoena store, these call data records would be utilized in projects or investigations to be able to prove links between suspects and add those existing links to new cases as you're working on a particular crime type. The role that it plays in the investigation is key, because it, one, allows you to establish timelines, and these timelines can also be utilized to prove or disprove an alibi. It's often held that the individuals that are utilizing mobile devices in the commissioning of crimes, like let's say CIT, they're using disposable mobile devices, but there's still data to analyze. There are still mobile devices present on the crime scene that can then be analyzed. So there's a whole array of data that's available, whether it's a burner phone or whether it's a contract phone. It does allow you to establish these timelines, and more importantly, track the suspect's movements as they move through the crime scene, for example, and then allowing you to connect suspects, witnesses, or victims to these events or the locations. What's often the case is that people disregard that the victim and witnesses also have a version to relay, and that version could be the data from their mobile device or the call data records, or in fact from the tower. And the tower information becomes quite critical, because we need to understand how the cellular network is put together and how these towers have different sectors. And then once you have that understanding, it goes to locating the origin of these calls or texts, and also the presence of a mobile device inside of the data that you're extracting from the tower. If we have a look here, this is just a screenshot from some sample data. So there weren't any actual humans hurt in the commission of the sample, but this is a sample of some data that we use when we train law enforcement officers in CDR analysis. And if you have a look, this would be the kind of data that you expect to see. You would have the time and date. You would have the number of the subscriber. You would also have the IMEI, which is the handset identifier. So IMEI, International Mobile Equipment Identifier. That's the individual serial number for your handset. And then you'll also have the IMSI number, and the IMSI number is the mobile subscriber identifier. That's quite a long number, and that in fact is the number that the service providers use to track you, relay calls. The telephone number that we use, the MSISDN, is in fact just a simple, easy number for you to remember to share that with other individuals. But in fact, behind the scenes at a technical level, the cellular providers use your IMSI. And the IMSI is quite important because the IMSI is associated with a SIM card. So every time you insert your SIM card into a mobile device, there's a log kept to say this SIM card was inserted into this mobile device. So every time you insert your SIM card into a mobile device, there's a log being maintained by the service provider. So if you thought that you're going to buy a burner phone or just getting a disposable SIM card and using it in your cell phone is going to allow you to hide, that's not the case. That data is quite thorough and all of it is logged. This would be a graphical representation, a visualization of the relationships that exist in the billing. So you can see, suspect A, who has been identified, is linked in terms of being a subscriber to a particular number, and then records link him to outgoing calls, incoming calls, missed calls. So that'll be a graphical relationship, and this is typical of what we refer to as relational analysis of CDRs. Cell site analysis is also part of the CDR process, but it is more technical, and it's performed also on the physical location, so at the crime scene. And what the cell site analysis seeks to do is it utilizes the process of triangulation and multilateration, which is in essence using multiple towers to cut very thin slices of the cellular network of that particular cell, and then being able to place a cell phone within a particular area inside of that cell. So if you can visualize what the cellular network looks like, it looks like a honeycomb. That's the kind of cell, and each tower has multiple sectors, and each sector then regards the mobile device in that area. So when you're sitting where you are now at home or at work or in class or wherever, your phone is constantly communicating with multiple cell phone towers. You would have what we refer to as the serving cell. So that would be the primary tower that you're attached to. But your phone also sees up to 9 or 12 different towers, which is called the neighboring cells. So you've got 9 or 12 different towers all seeing your mobile device. The signal strength, the distance from the tower, the data that's being relayed to your mobile device. So all of that information forms part of what we refer to as cell site analysis, and that data is accessible from the service providers. Being able to take those signals and determine how the mobile device moved through the cell. So whilst you're driving, your serving cell changes and your neighboring cells change as well. Doing a handover, seamless handover in microseconds so that you don't drop a call while you're driving. This is all the work of the cellular network. And then being able to take that information and visualize it onto a map becomes important, because what we actually want to do is we want to be able to place the cell phone on the crime scene during the commissioning of the crime. And you do have some challenges, and the real world examples of these where cell site analysis is crucial. Kidnapping cases, murder cases, CIT, it is being applied to a multitude of cases, types of cases. But there are also challenges. Rural environments have fewer cell phone towers. They are there nonetheless, but the kind of accuracy that you're getting from a rural site versus an urban site are quite significant. So there, that's a nice picture of a cell phone tower, and on that tower you will have an array of antenna. You'll see that the long, thin Kit Kat finger shape antennas, those are the cellular antennas. And then you also have microwave antennas, and the microwave allows the tower to communicate with other towers, to communicate with other types of infrastructure. But the thin tower, the thin antenna, you can see they're also installed at a pitch. And that pitch is quite important because it allows them to tune the signal so that they beam that signal into the area where it's necessary. So towers are obviously up high, and the radio signal, whilst most people consider that the radio signal will be omnidirectional, it's in fact not the case. The radio signal from the cellular tower is directional in that each antenna, which is regarded as a sector, has a unique identifier, which is referred to as a cell ID. That cell ID sees only the phones that are in front of it and within a specific arc of a degree. So, if your alibi says, oh, well, your tower says I was there, but in fact I was sitting at the McDonald's, your law enforcement will say, no, you weren't sitting in the McDonald's. You were actually sitting across the road in the Mug and Bean. And in fact, you were so far from the tower, and we can prove it utilizing the data extracted. I have, as an example, just taken a screenshot. So this is from a database that we utilize when we perform cell site analysis. And this if you can guess, is Pretoria Central. So you can see the Palace of Justice and Church Square there with a blue pin. And that gives you the dots around you. That's an idea of the different cellular towers and cell IDs and sectors that are around Pretoria. You can see there's several hundred, and a more detailed view. So I've actually just clicked on one of those icons, and you can see here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different sectors on one tower. So you have 8 directions in which that tower is regarding mobile devices coming and leaving. You have what we refer to as the angle of incidence, so people coming into a cell and leaving a cell. And then the data that you'll actually get from that one sector, you'll see there it says MCC, which is the mobile country code 655, that's South Africa. MNC is the mobile network code 10, I think that is MTN. And then you have the LAC, the location area code, and the CID, the cell ID. So the unique identifier for that antenna on that tower in that physical location at Church Square is 798466. It's an LTE, so it's a 4G. It's a 4G tower. It gives you the GPS, and the range of that particular antenna is 1,000 meters. But because the topography of the location won't allow 1,000 meters, 1,000 meters is a kilometer, then you're sort of out of the city center. But that's the power that cell phone is transmitting at. It has the ability to transmit up to 1,000 meters from that physical location. When we start getting data from the actual tower, this is how it would be regarded. So you have two individuals. 2 sets of billing that was extracted for this particular example, and you'll see here that the red one is one mobile device and the green one is another mobile device, and you can actually see how that the tower has created this arc where those mobile devices were found in, and the overlap would be where the 2 mobile devices were situated within a specific distance from the tower. This is another example, also a missing persons case that we use as a test. And this again would be the location of the surveillance unit and then the victim, where they were physically placed and which cell phone towers picked them up during their movement. So if you think for a moment that a kidnapping would involve a lot of surveillance, determining the pattern of an individual, when would be the best time to snatch them, early morning whilst they're opening the business, or late night while they're locking it up, or on a Sunday on their way to church. And this information is crucial in being able to identify when the surveillance started and what mobile devices were part of that surveillance, because that then allows you to uncover the network or the criminal syndicate behind the kidnapping network. In this example, you can actually see the movement. So you have the actual plotting. So not just the static snapshot of where the phone was in that tower. You can actually see how this person moved between different countries over a period of time. And this timeline here was a period of, I think, 6 months where the mobile devices were moved. You're driving down specific routes, flying to a different country, going offline, appearing in another country. So your billing data exists wherever you go in the world, and your location data is associated with you wherever you are in the world. This is just a bit more technical to show you, how the scanning gets undertaken. And this is the typical scanning that would be undertaken. So when you can scan for Wi-Fi networks, Bluetooth networks. So not only is law enforcement looking at the cellular network, but they also have the ability to scan for Wi-Fi networks, because a lot of the time that'll indicate what mobile devices were associated to a Wi-Fi network. And it might be well known, but it is a fact that in South Africa, the criminal syndicates are using Wi-Fi with WhatsApp calls. So being able to determine what phones were associated to which Wi-Fi networks at a particular time, that then allows you to uncover potentially the mobile device that was associated with that WhatsApp call. The important thing is the orchestration. So bringing all of this together. So being able to create and combine a shared view of the CDR data, the tower data, and the mobile device information becomes critical, because it allows you to create these timelines and the geographical mapping, and also correlating from multiple sources. A typical investigation could contain up to 20, 30 different mobile devices, and then add to that the tower data. And the impact, or rather the benefits, would be to enhance the evidence and providing these leads, either proving or disproving alibis, and then integrating those with other forensic disciplines like digital forensics for mobile devices, computers, CCTV enhancement or analysis, and then the physical evidence, which would be touch and trace, fingerprints, blood on the scene, fired cartridge casings, tire marks, skid marks, whatever the case may be. And all of this comes together at the very sharp end of the spear, which is to support the prosecution. A lot of the times we see in newspapers, the successes are the arrest was made, kingpin caught landing from Zambia, syndicate leader, but the arrest is only kind of half of the work. The important thing now is to be able to take all the evidence and produce it in such a manner that's acceptable to the court, but also to support the prosecutor, because the prosecutor and the victims in the case are the ultimate beneficiaries of all of this data. All of the processes undertaken in order to extract the data from the mobile device, to obtain the call data records from the service providers, and the tower data or the cell site analysis, and bringing that down. In terms of where we're seeing this going is that, in terms of the technology advances, it means that a lot of the data that we're anticipating finding on the mobile device now actually exists in the cloud. So most people are using, whether it's their Android or their iOS space or OneDrive or whatever platform you're using, to store your data securely in the cloud, and reducing the amount of data that exists on the mobile device. And that creates investigative challenges, because in order to access information in the cloud, it opens up another legislative jurisdictional argument, because where does that data actually exist, and what is the data sovereignty? If your data is hosted in the cloud and that server is hosted in Ireland or in the US or in Switzerland, they have different requirements in order for law enforcement to access that kind of information. There's a whole array of virtual anonymous storage spaces available, so that I don't have to store my data with AWS or in the Microsoft Azure. I can rent server space on an anonymous server where there would be no way for law enforcement to ever find where that data is stored. So it does present investigative challenges. With those challenges come other opportunities, and those opportunities include the utilization of artificial intelligence to assist with the analysis of the data. A lot of the applications that we're using now have an inbuilt, what they're referring to as Copilot, which analyzes the data and then starts prompting the investigator to say, are you aware that these links exist? Or did you know that this computer was utilized in the following Wi-Fi location? So it's becoming sort of almost a mental role. That being said, there are also two very prominent cases in the US where forensic evidence was disregarded because AI was used. The one case was where a number plate was generated utilizing really bad quality footage and AI to deliver a number plate. It was in fact the number plate of a suspect vehicle, but the fact that a computer rendered a number plate and not a suggestion of a few letters and numbers combination that the investigating officer had to investigate, verify, confirm, the investigator simply just relied on the number plate that was delivered by AI. That evidence was disregarded. And then another matter, it was in fact a forensic tool that was utilized to analyze a massive amount of data and then utilizing AI to provide certain leads to the investigators. It was found that the developer of the tool had lied about the accuracy levels, and in fact it created an anomalous amount of data which led investigators to falsely accuse certain individuals because the AI or their reliance on AI was of such nature that they didn't question what the tool was delivering to them. So when you are using AI for these kinds of things, we're always recommending a bit of prudence, a bit of discretion, common sense and logic to think about, what is it that I'm seeing and can it be used, will it be used, and how do I use it properly? This is a graphical representation of a cell phone that had moved through a particular location, and this was a reconstruction, formed part of a reconstruction that was utilized by law enforcement to plot the route that this individual had used during the commissioning of the crime, the surveillance, the actual snatching, and then ultimately where in this case, this sample data has been anonymized, but in this particular case, it was a person that was found deceased, murdered in this case, and the suspect then utilized their mobile device to create a false alibi, but the detectives then utilized cell site analysis and also the tracking of the towers to create a visual representation of where this individual had been through the commissioning of the crime. There's another version of the same kind of data, just overlaid onto a map. I think we're sort of at the time, and I can anticipate that you're sitting there thinking that this is like a fire hose. There's so much data being thrown at you, and trust me when I tell you that I could spend probably another 4 hours going on about this. But what I hope the message is that I conveyed is that the data does exist on your mobile device, where you are physically seated now, listening to me go on. The networks are able to with very great accuracy pinpoint you where you're sitting now. And law enforcement have the ability to recreate that data in such a way that even weeks after a crime has been committed and that person's gone, you have the ability to recreate that data and simulate in such a manner for the court to say that the individual was here when the crime was committed or the victim went missing at this physical location, and the data proves or disproves your investigative hypothesis. Questions?
Yes, Peter, that was phenomenal. Thank you so much. I want us to start quickly with the questions in the chat box. The first two was, can you extract data from a burner phone? And please quickly just explain what CDRs are, if it's possible to do that quickly. If you could do that.
Okay. So yes, you can recover data from a burner phone. So the phone does in fact store data on it. The burner refers to it's a cheap phone. It's also what we refer to as a feature phone. So it would be typically the kind of phone you buy at Clicks or Checkers for $99, those kind of disposable phones. But the phone does have memory. It does have the ability to connect to the internet. It does have the ability to store data, transmit data, and transact. So you can have WhatsApp on it. So yes, the short answer is yes, you are able to extract data from a burner phone.
Brilliant. And yeah,
CDR.
yeah.
CDRs is what we call call data record. So your interaction with the network as it relates to your calls and your SMSs is logged, and this is logged primarily for billing purposes. So when we refer to call data records, if a person's gone missing, one of the things that you do is you analyze the call data records, because associated with that itemized bill or with that call data records would be any calls that were made, missed, received, SMSs that were received or sent, but also more importantly, the location of the mobile device, the cell in which that cell phone was for each one of those events. So on your, if you have your itemized bill available from Vodacom or wherever, you'll see that there's a time, date, there's a call, the number that was dialed, the duration of the number. It might also tell you whether it's a forwarded call or if it was a missed call, and then also the cell data is there. Now, on your bill that you might be having a look at now, your tower information isn't available because it's not relevant to the billing. But you, as the subscriber, have the right to ask for that information, to say, I want to be able to say that this phone that I've assigned to this employee was utilized in an irregular manner. I want to know where this person was when they were doing these 1 hour long phone calls. So that the call data record is in fact just an event that the service provider logs for any calls that you made, received, missed, SMSs sent, excluding the content of the SMS, the duration of the call, the time and date, and then also the location where your mobile device was when that event occurred. So I hope that helped.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Sorry, my dog is just going crazy here in the study. I'm going to invite the students from the floor to raise your hands. You have the ability to unmute yourself. We are slightly over time, so if there are pressing questions that you would like to ask Peter, you are more than welcome to raise your hand, and then I will call on you and you can unmute yourself and ask. Okay, I'm not seeing any raised hands. If you are unable to raise your hand or unmute yourself, you are more than welcome to pop a question into the chat box.
I'm also busy dropping my email address into the chat box. So if there's something that you want to discuss, feel free to send me an email, and I'd be happy to engage with you on a more detailed technical explanation or a more simple technical explanation.
Okay. Peter Fryer is not available during exam time to assist you with exam papers. Peter, I'll let you know when they're writing exams.
All right.
Okay,
Thank
I
you for
see
that.
Eileen has her hand raised. Eileen, yes?
Yes, I'd like to ask about the dot. Like, can a person extract information that has been like protected with a firewall? As a detective, and like you have to extract certain information from a cell phone, but it's protected by firewalls. How do you overcome that challenge as a detective?
So that's a very good question. Thank you. So the technology that is utilized by law enforcement allows you in most instances, and remember I did say it depends. It'll depend largely on the make and the model of the phone, the version of the operating system, but the tools that the law enforcement agencies use circumvent most of the security of the mobile device. So that includes the PIN code that you might have when you switch the phone on, the passcode that you've got to access certain things. So once we're able to unlock the phone, then we perform what we refer to as a file system extraction, which means that we extract all the data from the mobile device. So we're actually not concerned about transacting with a phone. So we're not communicating with a phone, say, I want this information. We're saying, you're going to give me all of your memory, and then I'm using a tool, a analysis tool, to decode all of the apps. So when we download a phone, we're not interacting with a phone as the user would be, meaning opening the WhatsApp app and scrolling through the message. We're just taking all of the data off the phone and then analyzing it, and that analysis includes a process which is commonly referred to as data carving, and there you'll actually extract all of the data from the different apps and create a plain view of that data. There are some highly secure apps which encrypt the data with passcodes, but there are analytical techniques that are used by law enforcement and also by the manufacturers of all of these specialist forensic tools to access that information. So, the major hurdle for law enforcement is getting access to the phone because it's been locked with a passcode or a PIN. But the tools that are available allow for the circumvention, either the brute forcing of the password or the straightforward outright circumvention of it. And then there is still the third option, which is the chip off. That's dismantling the phone physically and basically just removing the chip and doing the whole extraction without once even interacting with the device at all. So we then don't care if there's a PIN code or a passcode on the mobile device.
Brilliant.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thanks, Peter. Any other pressing questions? In 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'm calling it. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Peter, once again, thank you for taking time out of your schedule. I really, really, really appreciate it. Will it be possible for you to share your PowerPoint in PDF that I can upload for the students, if that's okay?
Yes, I'll do that for you now.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much, everybody. Can we just give Peter a round of applause and just say thank you? He demystified for me things that I thought was beyond understanding, and he actually made it so simple, Peter. Thank you so, so much.
It's
Okay,
it's my
everybody.
pleasure, and
Okay.
if you need anything else in the future, I'm happy to help.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much. Everybody have a good evening, and we are signing off. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.